Te tawa mai ona, te tawa mai raro, te tawa mai roto, te tawa mai waho, te atau ai te mainitu, te mauriwa ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tai hie. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook, and I thought my voice was pretty good. And for those watching, if they can go onto our website and they can see the agenda. Apologies, Councillor Brown. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Tuppenny. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Is there any conflicts of interest? No public forum. Announcements by the Mayor.
Thank you, and through the Chair, I do have a few announcements today. Firstly, I would just like to acknowledge, of course, that we did have a positive test for COVID in our wastewater late last week. Fortunately, yesterday we received a negative test result, which is promising, but more testing and results are required due to the heavy rainfall over the weekend. So another sample was taken yesterday, with results expected later this week. If negative, this will provide us with more confidence that the virus is no longer in our wastewater. As always, please continue to protect yourself, get tested if you are experiencing any symptoms. Of course, get along and get vaccinated, wear your masks, scan when you're out and about, sanitise and follow all the guidelines. Secondly, I'd just also like to acknowledge that this week is, of course, the 1 year anniversary of the 2020 flood. We have this week released our report, which looks at the stormwater system and how it worked during the event. It also covers climate change and population growth and how this has impacted on the ability of our system to respond effectively. The response and the recovery of the flood are included in the report, and also the work program that is in place as a result of the event. And I would encourage our community members to go to our website and have a look at the report to read through if they would like to find out this additional information. I also want to recognise all those who actually worked through the flood event last year, our own staff, many of whom worked above and beyond and outside of their normal council roles. The many unsung heroes of our community who graciously gave up time away from their own whānau to support and provide assistance for those in our community who needed it most. And I won't name anyone because I would hate to miss anybody off that list. And of course, acknowledging and recognising those in our community who were impacted directly by the flooding event as well. And then last but certainly not least, today is of course Armistice Day, and it's the 103rd anniversary of the Armistice signing between the Allies of World War I. Unfortunately, myself and the councillors are unable to attend the RSA service this morning due to being in committee. However, we will take a break at 11 a.m. for a minute's silence to acknowledge the lives of lost and the returned servicemen who served in that war. So, thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any announcements. I was going to have one, but that was about Armistice Day. And at 11 o'clock, the bell will ring and we'll all stand up for a minute. Is there any notification of minor matters not on the agenda? Announcements by management?
Just one from me, just to let you know that the Environmental Solutions team are updating the solid waste bylaw, and they'll do that in conjunction with Hastings District Council, looking to get someone to help them with that, and it will address the matters that are being raised through the waste reform. So we'll keep you in that, but that's just to know that that's coming on stream. That's all from me.
Thank you. Can I have confirmation of the minutes for Sustainable Napier meeting held on the 19th of August 2021, please? Moved by Councillor Mawson, seconded by Councillor Bogue. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So we move on to the agenda item 1, and I ask Jason. This is Bledisloe Park, Hawke's Bay Indoor Bowls.
Morena councillors, Morena Mayor Wise, Morena to council staff, and kia ora to all those in the public who may be watching us at the moment on live stream. Today I are bringing this report to council to seek approval in principle for the Hawke's Bay Indoor Bowls Association to locate their facility at Bledisloe Park, subject to detailed feasibility, including consideration of co-location with other similar activities. My officer's recommendation to council is approval in principle for the Hawke's Bay Indoor Bowls to locate at Bledisloe Park, and for that approval to be given subject to the Bowls Club in conjunction with the council officers undertaking stakeholder engagement, detailed design, and confirming the club has sufficient funds to meet the full cost of the development. I take the report as read today, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
So Jason, this is a follow-up from the presentation they gave us.
Yes, that's correct. So I believe they reported to council within the last couple of months, identifying their proposal, and this is just a follow-up from me as the officer.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Councillor Tapani.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Morena. The paper is pretty straightforward. They're just asking for permission to engage with the community, really, aren't they? So are we able to... what I'm after is visibility of some parts of that consultation, particularly with community groups who use the reserve as a overflow parking and pickup area on the Bledisloe Park component itself. I know that the school, for example, has its main gate right on an intersection, and so the other 3 access points on that park are used actively by school users approaching Bledisloe School. We have 3 kindergartens bordering on that park. I know that there are a number of inter-school competitions that are held on that park, and so I'm particularly interested in understanding the impacts of shifting the traffic off-road and onto what is a busy artery on Lee and Gloucester Street, and what are the impacts going to be on the residents, on parking, and particularly on the safety of the kids approaching that block, because it's surrounded completely by some very active arteries. And so if we're going to be taking out a large chunk of parking which complements that reserve, I'm keen to understand what the impacts of that are on traffic movement and pedestrian safety, as well as those people who use the park for recreational use. When might I, what's your whakaaro there?
Kia ora, and thank you for that question through you, Mr. Chair. A few questions there, but I completely agree with some of the issues that you have raised, and that they do need to be investigated as part of this detailed design and investigation. We will be reporting back to council on this matter on the conclusion of our investigation, but in short, we would be undertaking a full engagement, would engage our engagement team to pull together an engagement report to ensure that we are talking to all the right parties, obviously the schools, the clubs, Lee Road users and residents in the area, along with potentially the Territorial Business Association. Those are all definitely parties that would need to engage with as part of this process. In relation to the safety matter in regard to vehicles and pedestrians, that has been identified to us previously as an issue there. We have, as a council, installed a footpath to provide separation from the car parking for the school kids and pedestrians to get safe passage to the school. That was done around 2.5 years ago. but there will be further investigation needed around actually how we manage pedestrians, vehicles on the road, and how we look at that intersection and make sure it is a safe location for the increased traffic movements that are likely to come as part of this operation. We will be looking at that as part of the resource consent as well. There will be a resource consent required for this activity. We're not going to go to the point of doing that resource consent until we have the consensus of this council that it is suitable following our next report to council. But that is definitely a key matter that we will need to address as part of the detailed design, so completely agree with you there. The only other matter I was going to raise was that the club is also seeking to build up to 40 car parks within the facility. So in respect to us potentially taking away car parking from park users and the community and school users, I believe that their proposal to build some additional car parking there should mitigate that concern. But again, more than happy to ensure that we look at that through the detailed design. Thank you.
Thank you. So I got two. First one around the car parks and the parking. So this is still early stages. So I'm just signalling that I'm keen to see where we land on this. I'm conscious that the fact that when we talk about school pickups and deliveries, that in their accessibility and traffic statements, they're also operating during the same hours as school pickup and delivery. So there's a conflict there that they're going to need to work through. The second question is are we leading this engagement and consultation because it impacts on the reserve? Yeah. Not as opposed to the club itself leading this? All right, thank you. Are there any other obligations upon us other than following a open and transparent consultation process?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. There is obviously an obligation to go through both the resource management...
Through the Chair, sorry. Last question.
Sorry, through you, through the Chair. The obligations of us are both under the Reserve Management Act, so we do need to publicly notify the lease if we do agree to it. That will be subject to an additional meeting of council once we've done this detailed design, so there will be that obligation. We obviously need to be engaging out of being good public servants, and we also need to ensure that they gain the appropriate resource consent and building consent at that stage. So there'll be multiple checks and balances for council to ensure that any of those effects or the building itself will be done in accordance with best practice and legislation. So thank you very much.
And one last question, Mr. Chair, timing.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The timing hasn't been determined yet. Obviously, we're subject to this decision, and then we will be working through the engagement process. There is a lot of engagement going on at the moment through council, so we will be working through that with our engagement team on as soon as they can undertake that. The club has already provided us quite a lot of detailed information, which is great. That gives us, we're really on the front foot in that respect. But the engagement will be what potentially takes the time, and unfortunately I don't have timeframes on that. I could take a stab and say in the next 6 to 12 months, but
I don't think you need to do that.
No, that's all right. Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped the line because I had a question that followed on from a question from Councillor Tapani's first question. So just to rewind to obviously the parking and access issue, and acknowledging obviously there is the 40 car parks there, which is great, and I am going to disagree with you here, Councillor Tapani, because I note that the hours of use for the Bowls Club actually don't conflict with school times at all. It's 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. at night on weekdays. So I'm just wondering, is there the ability through the consultation and planning process to actually come to some sort of formal agreement between the bowling club and the school to allow access and use by the school during school-related hours? Is that something that we could actually formally put through?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I believe there is an opportunity for that. It will be something that we'd have to discuss directly with the club. I'm not completely aware of their position on that, but it is definitely a good opportunity I see to have some really good use of that facility, given it's going to be on public land. So definitely something worth a good conversation and investigation with the Bowls Club and with Bledisloe School and Fairhaven, obviously.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Taylor.
Mine's been dealt with. It was just the hours because there's nothing before 9 a.m.
You done?
Yeah, no, it was just about the hours,
Oh, yeah.
because there's nothing prior to 9 a.m. So.
Yes. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you. Jason, just a quick question from me. I note in the constitution of the club there's an ability for them to apply for liquor licensing. Just confirmation from you that that is manageable. I know there can be some complications with the Reserves Act when looking to place facilities on reserves that also have associated potential liquor licensing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. There is obviously a number of clubs in our reserves that have liquor licensing, and this may be something that the club looks to investigate. Obviously, through the liquor licensing rules and laws, they'll have to go through the same process which any other club do, which is a club licence. Through that process, I believe there's a series of, or a matrix and a series of checks and balances that council has to do to ensure that the impact of issuing that licence isn't going to have an adverse effect on the community. So I believe there is a process there to make sure that they will be appropriately checked and ensure that it's appropriate.
Sorry, I possibly wasn't clear. Less interested in the liquor licensing application process, but more in our ability to place a new facility on a reserve that may have in the future licensing issues. Just some certainty that that's covered for in our Reserves Act planning.
Yes, so thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Our Reserves Act is due for an update, as you are aware and as I've reported on previously. Our current reserve management plan does not specifically for this reserve reference sale of alcohol, but that doesn't mean it's prohibited in my reading. Providing they go through the right checks and balances, I don't believe that would be an issue, but it definitely is worthy of further investigation, so that can be undertaken as part of our detailed design and conversations with the club.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? So do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Simpson moved, seconded by Councillor Taylor. You want to speak on it?
I need to say I think it's a good opportunity for them to improve their facilities and to locate to a more suitable location.
Thank you.
Can I just add to concur with Councillor Simpson, and also the fact that they're dealing with the cost, and they've put a lot of work into being able to find a suitable location, and I congratulate them for it.
Thank you. Councillor Vogue.
Yes, I also would like to speak in support of the resolution and commend the club for mentioning in their proposal the synergy with the positive ageing strategy. The ages of people participating in their club are varied, but the 60 to 80-year-old seniors are predominant, and it does fit in with our positive ageing strategy of active participation of seniors. And I think the relocation is very appropriate also, going from Onikawa to Territorial, where a vast majority of our seniors live. So there's lots of pluses in terms of that relocation. You know, it's going to the right place where the right people will be able to access it.
Thank you. So we've got 3 in favour. Is anyone against it? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Jason. Certainly some food for thought come out of that.
Thank you.
Bobby. Our next paper is the Napier Environmental Enhancement Fund proposal, and we've got Cameron Burton to speak on that.
Good morning, Your Worship, Mr. Chair, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of this report is to seek your approval for the establishment of a Napier Environmental Enhancement Fund to receive money from reparations in relation to bylaw breaches, for money sought from Ministry for the Environment funds and bequests or the like, to be a ring-fenced fund for the purposes of improving and enhancing the environment within Napier, which would be reported back to you annually and would be administered by the Environmental Solutions team. We would also support initiatives in relation to the public coming to us and saying, I think I've got a good idea, but I'm struggling to fund it, so that we could administer that and line it up with our own proposals throughout the city. And it would mean that as a special fund at the end of each financial year, that money is ring-fenced and could be built up to provide significant benefits to the city. The purpose of this report is to seek approval of that proposal if you see fit.
Thank you. Any questions? Nappy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Will be a question, eh?
Yes, it will be a question, though.
Thank you.
Straight to the question then. Two of. First is there a strong alignment between the purpose of this fund and our aspirations as outlined in the Waste Management Plan? If that is yes, then my next question is there an opportunity to strengthen the component of education-related opportunities in association with this fund?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's not a waste-related topic as such. This is more relating to the urban waterways and enhancement of biodiversity throughout the city. Mm-hmm. So there's not really a link to the waste minimisation plan through this proposal.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, so just to help me understand, Cam, so the reason why I've linked those two together is because there's a component of behavioural change within our residents in order to get better environmental outcomes that is expressed within the waste minimisation plan. And so if this fund is around the enhancement of environmental outcomes, how do we get alignment between those two pieces of activity?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the waste minimisation plan is separately funded, and the outcomes around that are done so through separate funding proposals. That is kept as a separate matter. The enforcement of bylaw breaches and Litter Act breaches and the education that goes on around that is carried out by both the Regulatory Solutions team and by the Environmental Solutions team. And where there are hotspots, we've provided a new process recently as to how the asset owner of the areas that are hotspots for illegal dumping and that sort of situation are dealt with, but that's separate to the purpose of this fund.
And one final statement, actually more than a question. Just wishing to acknowledge the work that the team have done with regards to achieving a judicial decision in this space and creating new opportunities. And particularly as we look to make environmental changes across the city, there may be more legally based fines that will need to be placed into a fund of this nature, which may increase our capacity going forward. So just wanted to acknowledge the work that the environmental team have achieved in connection to this paper.
Thank you. We're still on question time. So, Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Cameron, for the paper. I just want to make sure that I have the fund mechanics, I suppose, correct in my head. So we would set up the fund, monies would be received into it primarily from the outcome of regulatory activities like prosecutions. I'll let you maybe at the end correct me as I go, because I do think I possibly don't have it correct. So monies will be received into the fund. That will be managed in a contestable application style way by yourself and your team over a yearly process. Obviously there's a reporting component back to council in there, but there's no criteria as such. There's some outcomes you're looking to achieve in that. And as you answer me, perhaps you could correct me, sorry. Perhaps you could also touch on if there's a risk that it's oversubscribed because I'm not sure how frequent you're expecting that money income to be. And then secondly, is there a comms or promotional component that you're looking to bring into that, or will it be more responsive as things come to your team's attention? Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, great questions. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Our outcomes of fines through prosecutions would be handled slightly differently. They wouldn't go into this fund because the mechanisms of that are slightly different. Where there is a discharge without conviction but reparations are promised, for the purposes of environmental enhancement, that is where that sort of funding would go. In relation to the contestable applications, the operational procedures around that will be established, but this paper was just to get an idea of whether you would approve the setup of that as a in principle sort of scenario. Communications around its existence and oversubscription, we would have to judge that as they came in, I suppose, and limit obviously to what was in the budget for that particular year, or not in the budget, sorry, in the fund, and yeah, we would manage that to ensure that the best outcomes were sought from each of those projects without going outside of the funding available.
Thank you, Cameron. That does clear up the mechanics of it a little bit better for myself. Just a question, I suppose the natural alternative to this is that those reparation funds are put into a council-led project of some description. So could you provide us some commentary on what alternatives you considered? I assume that was one of them, and how you've come to this being your preferred?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely, we have contemplated that. There's significant capital funding at the moment for environmental projects with different outcomes, particularly around the quality of stormwater in particular. This fund is slightly more targeted in that with reparations, for instance, the target has to be specifically, or it doesn't have to be, but is normally specifically related to a particular area that we may or may not have a capital project already assigned to. So it doesn't restrict the money available going into a particular predetermined council project, but more opening it up to the community to enable what's important to them to be potentially funded by this fund.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just a question in relation to the bequest, and it sort of, are you giving thought to having discussions with the Hawke's Bay Foundation, who are very active in those bequests, and having some relationship with them so that you can link those two together?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we hadn't specifically approached Hawke's Bay Foundation, but are aware of what they do. So if there was an approval of this, then that's one of the organisations that we would start touching base with.
Any further questions? Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Crystal.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm really happy to be in support of this, I suppose, in principle, noting that there will be some further information coming back to us, and primarily because I think it is a good opportunity to introduce that kind of community-led project funding, which we really have missed in that environmental space. So I think good work by you and your team to identify a way to make that happen. I know funding can be tight, and this seems like a good workaround. I think for me it's still a little bit messy maybe in how that will be how that will all be worked through, and I think some of the opportunities, you know, Councillor Taylor's just mentioned a new one for partnering in the development of how that fund will work is still open, so I look forward to seeing where you get to with it.
Okay,
thank you.
I think when we talked about this paper, it summed up exactly what you've said there, is we want the council's approval to go ahead with it and then get the workings of it Yeah. Councillor Crystal, do you?
I just agree with Deputy Mayor Bronson, and also just it seems like a really good solution to an issue that we mightn't previously have had. So it's really good thinking to put this together, and hopefully once we've got it all sorted, it'll be a great fund for our community to go to you know, make our environment a much better place.
Thank you.
Any further comments? So all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Cam.
Thank you.
Item 3, report on Napier water supply status, and we've got Anzi.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mayor, councillors and the members of the public. So my report today is covering the status of Napier water supply at the end of Q1 of 21-22 compliance year. And there is also attached the annual compliance report issued by Drinkwater Assessor for the previous compliance year, which shows we have been fully compliant in the previous year. I will take this report as read. You might have noticed that a majority of the staff was business as usual, so no significant events occurred in the Q1, and we have been, to our understanding, fully compliant with the current standards. Any questions?
Any questions? Councillor Crystal.
Just relating to the customer service requests that we've had in the report, how do these compare to previous reports? Have they dropped? The same?
Thank you for your question, through Mr. Chair. So I guess you're most interested in water clarity complaints in Napier. So yes, these results show that number of discoloration events in Napier have reduced substantially. So in April we had 90, in May we had 104 complaints. Then we put in place DMA, that was in June, and after that you can see like very low numbers, which is very promising. Although we had an event in on 23rd of October where there was like a ad hoc maintenance repair on a big valve, which caused quite a spike of complaints coming from PMI, but we know why that happened. So yeah, like overall the trend is good.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. You may not be able to answer this, and I may have to put it through to John, but I understood originally we were going to have, there was 4 dechlorinated water stations were planned. We've done 2. Is that correct? And if so, is there any intention for the other 2 to be installed?
Thank you for the question. I will leave this to John or Deborah to respond.
I'm happy to respond through the chair if you would like me to. My recollection is that we consulted on up to 4 and decided on 2.
Pretty clear. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, I have a question through you, Mr. Chair. I see that the new regulator Taumata Arawai is being taken over as of from the Ministry of Health on the 15th of November 2021. What difference will that make in terms of reporting and inspections and that sort of thing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, that is correct. Taumata Arawai is taking over regulatory space from next Monday from Ministry of Health. There is also an update on the new drinking water standards and the operational rules. The Taumata Arawai has already shared those with public around 2 to 3 weeks ago, before this report was compiled. Going forward, it looks like we know that the current drinking water standards and rules are going to stay in place until 30th of June next year. So from 1st of July next year, the new operational rules and standards will come in force. That is, of course, they're going to be they might be slightly modified because they have to go through the public consultation early next year. So what that means for us is we know we're going to lose secure bore status. So we're not going to be compliant with protozoa and bacterial sections. We are working on our capital program to commission additional bores which will have appropriate treatment and will be compliant. But for the other bores where those arrangements cannot be currently done, we will not be compliant there.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Anzi. Just a question. I wasn't aware Tamata Arawa had released some of their plans yet. And have we seen from them if they have released their exemption assessment criteria for chlorine mandatory chlorination?
So the exemption for the chlorine-free reticulation sits within the Water Services Act, so it's not part of those drafts. So nothing changed there from the Water Services Bill when it was presented to when it became an act. So there is a lot of uncertainty around that, so no further details have been revealed.
Thank you.
Other questions? Do I have a mover? Councillor Simpson, seconded Councillor Mawson. Any comments?
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair, I'm always excited when I see green ticks on reports like this. But more importantly, it's good that our staff are fully up to date with the changes in the water space and they're aware of the regulatory changes and what obligations that brings on our staff and working with other agencies around future reporting.
Thank you.
Just to follow on from Councillor Simpson, I'm really looking forward to the public consultation with the operational rules from the drinking water or the new Taumata Arawai. Quite interested in seeing what that consultation is like.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Glenn. Lucas. Peterborough Green Arena Development Reclassification of Reserve. My pet.
This is kind of my question to the last one. I think we should say this is kind of my question to the last one. Classification of reserve to community use.
Not going to reclassify.
Kia ora koutou. So the first report I've got in front of you is the reclassification of the reserve. The purpose of the report is for Council to resolve to initiate the Reserves Act process of reclassifying part of Riverside Park in Territorial. So essentially, PGA Arena, as you know, has been on Riverside Park for quite some time. There is an extension going on to build another great big indoor court space to provide really badly needed indoor court space for the region. To enable that to happen, what's required is reclassification of an additional portion of the Riverside Reserve from Recreation Reserve to Local Purpose Buildings Reserve. So the process is underway. This has been largely run through by the project. So I've been working alongside them as the lead council representative. So this paper has been prepared and the process has been kicked off by the project using an external facilitator. Essentially what we are resolving to do today is to, in principle, reclassify the portion of the reserve that the extension is going to go on. And to note that the next step in this process, should it be ticked off, is it's going to be publicly notified where public will have a chance to give us their views. And then we'll go from there.
Any questions? Right. Do I have a mover, please?
Happy to move.
Mayor, seconded by Councillor McGrath.
Only new.
Sorry. Comments? Mayor.
Obviously, just to acknowledge that this clearly it makes sense to do this reclassification, and look forward to the process unwinding.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, through the chair, totally agree. This is a great project for Napier, and I think we need to progress it as quickly as we can. Moving it on.
Thank you. Any other comments? Totally agree with Councillor McGrath on that one. Let's get it going, and it is going actually. So all of those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Stay there, Glenn.
Okay.
Item 5, Peterborough Green Arena Extension Agreement for Council Approvement.
So as you're probably aware, the site of PGA Arena is quite a complex site, and there's been a whole bunch of horse trading to date to make sure that they can get the surrounding land to make this project happen. So on the northern boundary there is EIT land. EIT have been a foundational partner of PGA, and they've been fantastic through this process. Most of it is on NCC reserve, and there is also HBRC governed land to the south of the site. So to make this entire project happen, these agreements are required to provide the legal parameters, I suppose, to enable the project to be completed. So there are 3 of them, and without getting into too much of the legalese, the first one is to grant an easement for EIT to enable them to access their student village, which is at the back of the EIT site. So they've given a triangular sliver of land to us to enable the project to happen. The student village is on the back of the site, and so they're looking to for an easement for a right of way to enable their students to to get to their village essentially. I've done the agreements in the wrong order, but anyway, there is also a triangular sliver of land which is part of the EIT student village, which they have proposed to gift to us for no cost. That is where the right of way is going to go on, and it's required to fit the entire footprint of the building. And the final agreement is a temporary car park licence, which is in place for the car park at the top of the Gloucester End Road of the EIT land. This is really an operational agreement between EIT largely and RISEC as operators of the facility, but we are party to this agreement as well, as we own as reserve owners for where the land is on. So the recommendation of the paper is to approve the 3 agreements and to delegate authority to our Chief Executive to sign them on behalf of Napier City Council, really.
Any questions, Councillor Taylor?
No, sorry.
Any questions?
One question.
Yes.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. So, my question is there any opportunity to get a larger image of this work, including, because as I look across these 2 papers, it gives a good understanding of both of the papers that have come to council, but what I want is a composite image which helps overlay these changes as well as where we're moving other existing, such as the dog park. I didn't see that in any of the other images. So is there any chance that we could circulate a composite image of what that will look like at the end of the process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I can't see an issue with that at all. At the moment, they all exist on separate pieces of paper, but it shouldn't be any issue at all to lay them all on top of each other to show you all the comings and goings of the site.
Thank you.
Been quite a mean feat putting all this together, and I think Dick Hilton from the EIT has been very helpful, and Chris Collins, they've been very helpful and supportive, so it's good that we're getting it all put together. Any other questions? We have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Mawson.
Oh, yeah, I just think, it's a tidy up of some of the legalities around this, and as in the previous paper, it's advancing well. I think it's a huge asset to our recreational facilities for the region, and onwards and upwards.
Councillor Mawson.
Get it done.
Get it done. Any other comments? So all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Were you wanting some more questions the way you're sitting there? John, item 6, capital program delivery.
Kia ora tātou. Through you, Mr. Chair, just presenting here a brief update on our capital program delivery across our various projects in our annual plan this year. I will take the report as read and perhaps give you an update on some of the items identified in the body of the report with regard to progress. So the report identifies projects going to tender, including Whakariri Ave revetment, so that is out for tender currently. Our manganese-free water treatment plant contract was awarded by the Hearings Committee this week. So some good progress going on there. I do believe our drilling contract has also been awarded. So good to see progress in that space. Projects nearing completion. Thames Pandora is largely operational and we're just about to move to practical completion, as is West Quay and Meani Quay traffic calming. York Auckland intersection is underway and progressing well. Roberts Terrace is well underway, as is our Fire Flows project. Others worth mentioning, perhaps Centennial Hall floor demolition. That is underway with regard to construction, which starts with demolition. We are facing some challenges with our specialist contractor to construct a new floor. They are an Auckland-based company and currently in lockdown in Auckland. We are in contact with MB seeking an exemption for them to travel outside of Auckland to undertake our project work, and that is currently in process. We have our fingers crossed but are not holding our breath. So that could impact on that project and the timeframes associated with that. And that is the updates for the body of the report. And there's obviously the attached spreadsheet with a number of other project updates, and perhaps at this point I'll just take questions on any of those.
Councillor Bogue.
Right, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John. A couple of questions. One is the Mariwa shop improvements. It said it's being rescoped. I just wondered if you could just tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Sure. Thank you for that question. Through you, Mr. Chair, the Mariwa Shops project and its ideal design came in well over budget, and so that is back with the transportation team to look at alternatives that still largely achieve the safety benefits that are desired while trying to trim up on cost.
So if you don't mind me asking a bit more about that, will that go back to the retailers and community, or is it just a variation on what's already been in front of them?
That is a great question. I think that will largely depend on the scale of any changes, but I imagine that the team will be wanting to revisit any change design with the community.
Thank you. Just one other question. I see you've mentioned the Roberts Terrace playground renewals, which is great. I wondered about the Maraenui playground renewals, the splash pad. Seems to have been nothing much happening there recently.
Thank you for that. Looking to the back of the room to help our Parks and Reserves team leader there, and he's grinning away at me. I don't have that information directly to hand, but Jason, are you able to provide some information on that? I do know that our professional service provider providing our project management oversight has had a change of personnel that may have impacted on progress, but if I could ask Jason to perhaps help me out here, that would be great.
Thank you for that question, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that project has recently been signed off in relation to the engineering approvals. It is being jointly managed by our community engagement team, who we've managed to undertake some of the planting and the install of the gardens and the speed humps through there, which you would have obviously seen. But I do believe that the project now is at the point of just finalising that design and having the contractor commit to timeframes around the build. But unfortunately, we don't have those timeframes at this stage. I would have to go back to the project manager on that and get timeframes, but I'm happy to provide those at a later time. Thank you.
Maybe by email, would that be all right if we got an email to that effect? Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, just a very important question. McLean Park digital screen, it says it's at the initiate stage. Do we have a time period when we can expect to see a decent screen at McLean Park?
That's the information that I had available to me in our reporting tool. I do know that the contractor has been, the contract for the purchase and installation of the screen has been awarded, and that the screen has been awarded and it is en route to New Zealand. I will have to come back to you with a time frame around installation.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you for that.
So it is further progressed than what I was able to report on in that spreadsheet at the time of the report.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Wise.
Thank you, through the chair. Just wanting some timelines, please, around the manganese-free water and in particular the drilling contract and when we might be expecting to have our new bores online.
Perhaps I could call, through you, Mr. Chair, call on Russell or one of his team to speak directly to that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The expected delivery date of that through the tenders, the target is the end of March. This is part of the water reform program of works. But we have allowed for, so the target date is March, but we're estimating that given the tight time frame over the summer and potential delays through the program, it may be April more than likely, but we're still targeting that March date.
Thank you. And so is that for when it is operational or when it's complete and there would be following steps to actually make it operational?
No, that's the operational target time. There will be, some commissioning work, but that's all been allowed for in the program of works.
Great, thank you.
No worries.
Any other questions? Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Crown, seconded by Councillor Simpson. Any comments, Councillor Crown?
Thank you, through the chair. Just fantastic to have this visibility and the scheduled updates. Aroha mai. As I was saying, fantastic to have the visibility and the scheduled updates on these projects. It prompts us to remember, there's a lot of stuff going on. So, yeah, thanks to the team.
Thank you. No comment. So all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you, John. 9. Lease of Reserve Territorial Bridge Club. Brian Faulkner.
Easement over a reserve. Number 7.
Sorry.
You're in a hurry, Councillor Price.
How many did I jump?
117.
Page 117.
117, Keith.
Right, we'll start again. We'll still use you though, Brian. Easement over reserve, Territorial Park.
Good morning. Look, this item just seeks permission pursuant to the Reserves Act to grant an easement to enable the subdivision to occur at 13 Church Road. and to connect into a sewer main which is already under the reserve. So it's simply they just have to cross a small distance under the reserve and hook into that main. So just seeking permission there.
Okay, any questions?
Happy to move.
Oh, happy to move. Seconded by Councillor Taylor.
I had a question.
Oh, question.
I see in the report, Brian, there's no sort of permanent damage, all those sorts of things, but will there be any temporary inconvenience to reserve users?
Well, only with the trench digging, to enable that connection. So it'd be very temporary,
And it'd be right on the fringe of the park?
Yes, it is. Very close to the boundary of those, that property. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Right, Councillor Mawson, you're moving it. Seconded by Councillor Taylor. No comment? No comment? Any comment? Any other comments? No? All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 8, we're here. Lease of reserve coffee caravan Silver Bullet.
Yep, so this item simply seeks permission pursuant to the Reserves Act again to grant a new lease for that Silver Bullet coffee caravan. It's been there since 2013. It has changed hands several times, but there's never been any complaints. Its existence is sort of complementary to the reserve. It's there for the convenience of the reserve users, so we're just formalising that occupation with a new lease.
So further to that, when we did the redevelopment, that was a specific item that was to be put there, the bullet for members of the public going along there. So I think Rod Drury said so he can sit down and have a coffee whilst children play. So that's how that we got quite specific on that. So is there any other questions? A mover? Councillor Taylor, second to Councillor Simpson. Right. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Yeah. Item 9, lease of reserve Territorial Bridge Club. Brian.
Look, once again, pursuant to the Reserves Act, just seeking approval to grant a ground lease to the Territorial Bridge Club. This matter has come before council probably nearly 12 months ago, where council sort of approved that in principle, subject to council management being satisfied with design and what have you. Resource consent has been granted. The matter, if approved today, it does have to be publicly notified. What we're asking for here is if there are no submissions or objections, if we're asking that lease be approved. If we do get any submissions or objections, we'll come back to council. So we do have to advertise. And we are asking that today a decision of council. They're very keen to get going with this development, Territorial Bridge Club.
Okay, any questions? Do I have a mover? Councillor Taylor, seconded Councillor Crystal. Any
Go
comments?
first if you like.
I know the Bridge Club have been waiting a very long time to do this, and this came to us, I think, right at the beginning of our term. So the sooner they can get going and have a proper club rooms, the better for the people, particularly it's an elderly population that use it, the better. So, vote in favour.
Yeah, I think Councillor Crystal summed it up. We had a public forum, I think it started with, where they came and spoke to us. I know Territorial councillors have met with them on a number of occasions. They've done a tremendous amount of work in fundraising. I know that they're very close to securing the remainder of the funds that they require, and it's great that we can see this through to fruition and they can get a home.
Thank you. We'll just take a short pause now and be standing for Mr. Day remembrance. Thank you. Right, do we have any other comments? All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And I have a mover for a decision of council, please. Councillor McGrath, seconded Councillor Crown. Do you wish to comment?
No, you're slowing the process down.
All those in favour of the decision of council, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. That's the end of the open agenda. Hand over to Deputy Mayor Brosnan.